Alright guys, here we are with yet another original build. First thing, this build originated by me wanting to make a mana guide build while also embracing my genuine love for the Flame Rush spell, and it makes me quite happy because of this whoosh and wipe feel. The reason why the showcase was at 500 corruption is both because I haven't had the time to get the ideal gear yet, having leveled this character in a couple of days, and also because from what I experienced, this build feels very good for farming and mapping, but lacks in the bossing department at higher end corruption. So I'd recommend this build where it shines, from level 30, when it becomes available, up to the end game at about 800 corruption, I'd say. It does perform extremely well in very dense maps like Unclaimed Troves or False Temples. I have no doubt this build can clear above 1000 corruption maps, but I have some doubts about it being effective for Shades of Orbis and Rampant Coasts. It can also do normal Aberoth pretty comfortably. I will try to push the gear further, but I feel the way we scale damage is not compatible with the high-end corruption boss's damage mitigation design despite our DPS being quite thick. As you can see here on the dummy, we hit for about 1.5 million damage per lightning wave without anything else. But let's jump into it, shall we? The pieces of the equation here are the following. We have focus with the lighting waves node, giving us a fat amount of damage around us while we channel. Runic invocation, in particular we go for Rune Gale, that also gives us AoE damage and 3 seconds of haste. This is the invocation we get from a lightning fire lightning sequence of runes. Then we have Flame Ward for extra protection and ward burst, Static Orb, which we will use both for some extra AoE damage and to proc on hit effect and give us Lightning Aegis for extra damage and protection. And finally Flame Rush, which we use to dash around quickly while automatically proccing Runic Invocation and Static Orb. Let's see how it works quickly. We channel Focus, then dash with Flame Rush, automatically proccing our other stuff. As you can see, this automatically applies 10 stacks of shock and 10 stacks of lightning shred if we hit our enemies with Flame Rush. We wait for haste to fade while letting our spells do their job and dash again. Repeat until satisfied. As you can see in the gameplay demo, this allows us to clear echoes pretty smoothly. In terms of defenses, we are pretty solid since we have a bunch of armor while channeling, maxed resistances, some damage reduction from the focus skill tree, the proc of lightning aegis from Static Orb, damage reduction while in Flame Rush, a bunch of ward, and some other damage reduction nodes from the passive tree, which we will see in a moment. But first, let's delve a bit deeper into our skills and their trees. So, focus. Here, of course, we go on the bottom left branch, and first we get Iron Stance for bonus armor per intelligence while we channel the skill. Then we get this Energy Overflow node here, which is the one that causes the lightning waves, which are our fattest damage source. As you can see, the waves have their base damage as a percentage of our maximum mana, and that's why we are going to get a lot of mana in this build. The spell also scales with intelligence, lightning damage, and spell damage, and of course is a hit, so crit multi is going to be another stat we need to scale damage. On this branch, we also take the rest of the nodes, and one down here, Unstable Energy, which increases the base damage of the previous node when we are at maximum mana. And then we reach this Rapid Overflow node for increased frequency. Consider that this spell does not scale with attack speed, as the frequency of this waves is fixed. The damage calculator will show an increase in damage if you increase attack speed, but that's just not effective. The damage calculator sucks. On this tree also, we go on the top right branch and grab the Shocking Aura node for a massive 20% damage reduction. Every enemy we are going to touch is going to have stacks of shock, so this will always apply while we channel focus. Runic Invocation. This is a spell we are never going to cast directly, but always proc through Flame Rush, so we don't care about any cooldown reduction node. What we care about is the Immutable Order node, which allows us to always get a rune order that mirrors the elements of our skill action bar. So if we have Lightning Fire and Lightning as you see me having here, we will always get Rune Gale as our invocation. That's all this node does. To get there, we pass through the left here and down through Author of Arcana, which also refunds the whole mana cost. Other than that, we get some damage bonuses on the nodes on top right, a little more area for Rune Gale on the top left, and then we get Runic Energy on the bottom left to get some extra damage. From Rune Gale, we don't get massive amounts of damage anyways, but it helps with the clear and the speed since it gives us haste. Then we have Static Orb. This one also just helps a bit with the clear and the on-hit procs like Shred and Shock, but doesn't really have those fat damages we like to see. But hey, everything adds up. Here the main node we want is Static Armor here on the bottom right, which grants us Lightning Aegis for up to 8 seconds. Also, We want this node on the top left orbital fulmination that makes the static orb actually orbit around us, and then we get the scatter blast from the top right, which gives us extra little orbs, up to 4, which also help with the on-hit effects. Everything else is just a little damage boost, but nothing too crazy. Flame Rush, as previously mentioned, this is our traversal skill and our primary movement source. Without it, we are just snails. Here we get the whole bottom left branch, where we have energy equivalents, to turn it into a lightning spell with its resistance shred. And then we get the autocast for Static Orb with Beta Decay, here. On the very bottom we have Epilogue for the auto runic invocation proc, while on the very bottom right we have resistance shred on pass-through with the Smolder and Burn node. Every other node is for utility, respectively speed and range, cooldown recovery, and damage reduction. Lastly, Flame Ward. This is for plain defense since we get a burst of ward, hit damage reduction, and less elemental damage taken. This is just a bonus since it doesn't really affect the build mechanic, but it saves our lives against bosses if we time it correctly. I'll just hover quickly here because everything seems pretty obvious. Now let's discuss the passive tree and the most important nodes. You will also find everything on the planner I will link below somewhere. So, on the mage tree we get intelligence and resistances, a bunch of health and mana, and ward retention. Then we move on the sorcerer's tree despite it not being our mastery, and we get the calculated destruction node for extra int and crit chance per int, and the mana shell node for extra mana and ward per second. Then we go for the lightning damage and lightning penetration nodes. And then we go on the Runemaster's tree where we have a bunch of important nodes. Spear of Protection gives us extra damage reduction, Transcendence for HP and ward per second, Mental Catalysis for extra int and defense, Decree of the Burning Wind for extra damage to bosses, Ancient Inscriptions for extra intelligence and cooldown recovery, Runic Fortress for armor while channeling, and Cerulean Runestones for mana and endurance. We fill the rest of our points with Edict of the Scion for extra area and ward on hit, and Quintessence of Triumph for extra spell damage. Let's look at the itemization now. The items I'm going to show you are far from perfect since they are the ones I've scraped around in very little time. But it's a good thing because it means you can get them easily as well, and also that there's quite an amount of extra potential for the build. I will give you a link down below for the aspirational gear if you ever pick this up and decide to min-max it. The one very necessary item in this build is Mana Guide, which is very common and you will find a bunch just using Amulet Prophecies. Due to its low level, it's also easy to get with more than one LP. This amulet allows us to move while we channel focus at 80% of our normal movement speed. It also gives us a bit of mana and ward per second while channeling. Here we slam mana, and if we have more LP and Jolra approves, we also get crit multi or lightning penetration. Then we use the Velatria set. I just got this double T7 helmet, but you can use the actual set item without losing too much damage, even at 500 corruption. And of course we want the Legends Entwined ring to complete the set. Here I got a marvelous one with very good rolls. If you don't have access to this ring yet, you can actually use the Velatria staff early on. It's going to work pretty well up to 200 to 300 corruption, and then you swap for better options such as the ones I'm going to show in a moment. The Velatria set here helps us boosting the base damage of our skills other than focus, which will already have pretty high one, and thus make even better use of all the intelligence we are stacking. For the same reason on the other ring we get the Ferrobor Persistence, just for extra intelligence. Here also you can use the actual set ring until you can slam the set affix on a better one. If you aren't level 72 yet, you can just use whatever ring with intelligence and increased damage or any legendary that fits. For example, the Lyeth's Signet or Julra's Star Dial, as they both work pretty well with the build. For the body armor, we aim for the Unstable Core because it gives us a lot of what we need. A lot of mana, increased damage, and 1 skill level. Here of course we slam intelligence, and if we have a 2 LP, you can aim for Lightning Crit Multiplier. If you're not level 77, you can just use any chest piece with intelligence and mana, or whatever unique item fits. In the main hand, we use the Dragarath's Claw. Because of the base crit, a bit of spell damage, crit multi, and resistance is bonus. Here we slam crit multi again, and if we have access to more LP, which is quite easy, we go for lightning penetration, or you can even slob more mana. We don't really go for armor shred since we cannot really sustain lots of stacks, but you could consider chance to apply frailty for extra protection if you don't have it on the gloves. On the offhand, we go for an exalted crystal skull because of its base crit and intelligence implicits. Here we want crit multi and ideally mana, which I didn't get yet. Here you can also fill with resistances if you are missing some. For the belt we have the Orion's Descent, just because of its intelligence bonus, While on the gloves, we go for an exalted, ideally the eternal gauntlets, for their extra defensive implicits. Here we aim for mana and intelligence, and if possible, hybrid health and chance to apply frailty. Here you see a double T7, but don't mind it. Even if you get a single T7, it won't change much. For the boots, again, we get an exalted, ideally the Citadel boots for extra defense, especially if we aim for higher corruption. For me, this pretty chunky piece worked okay up to 500 corruption with just move speed, int, and cooldown recovery. Ideally, as defensive stats, we would want added armor and bonus reduced damage from critical strikes. Lastly, we use the Storm Carved Testament as our relic, because it's just amazing just for the mana and lightning penetration. Here we slam in, and if we have 2 LP, we go for more crit multi. For the idols, what we really want are those big adorned idols, ideally with lightning damage, while we have lightning aegis and increased lightning damage that gets doubled if we have more than 300 mana, which we have for sure. As you see, I didn't really get any yet, but if you farm them consistently with prophecies, you will get them. I have quite a lot on my Lightning Blast Runemaster, which sadly it's on the seasonal interface, so I couldn't get them transferred. For the blessings, we get crit multi, bonus resistances, armor while channeling, bonus armor percentage, and chance to shred lightning resistances. Here are some final considerations. Of course, this build would benefit from a little bit more movement speed to make it even smoother. I pushed this easily to 500 corruption, and I think anybody can do it, even with budget gear, but as I said earlier, I don't see it going much above 1000 corruption. That's because, sadly, for what concerns high-end corruption bosses, this game doesn't love thick, fat chunks of damage, but loves little, repetitive, fast farts that can apply lots of ailments and debuffs, with very little exceptions that have their own way of bypassing damage mitigation, such as with the Bearquake Beastmaster or Erasing Strike Void Knight. This is why I don't see this build ever doing Uber Aberoth or even Shades of Oribis above 1000 corruption. We have a lot of damage mitigation ourselves, but I don't see it being enough to mitigate a sudden tail swipe from a 1200 corruption Rampant Coast Rift Beast. But I guess we will see. If you have any ideas, suggestions, corrections, or whatever, feel free to express them in the comment section. I don't post this builds for the sake of it, but because I hope to engage the community, so let's discuss it and perfect it together. It's more fun for you and it's more fun for me. That said, I'm out. Peace.